Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Ham Radio Dude, and you know what? The Xiegu X6100, it has a feature. It's called IQ Out, and if you haven't heard of that before, in short, what it is IQ Out allows you to have audio output, essentially, to your computer, like a line in or a microphone, and it allows you to use programs like HDSDR to get a very wide or a wider spectrum of waterfall display than you would with your Xiegu X6100 main display. And just for clarification, you use this line in alongside of your CAT control or your USB out into your computer in order to control the radio fully. So today I want to walk you through how you could set up your Xiegu X6100 and your Windows computer to use HDSDR to control your radio, but also to have a very wide waterfall display like you see here. We're going to get started with the X6100. All right, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to plug in your USB-C cable that came with the X6100, and you're going to plug it into the dev port on the side of the radio, as you can see here. After you have this plugged into the dev port on the X6100, go ahead and plug the other end into your computer. And Windows will probably alert you that, hey, it's detected a new device, and just ignore that for right now. Let's bring the radio over to the other side, and we need to plug in a minimum of two things. Now, you can plug in power, but you're going to need to plug in your antenna for a signal, and then you're going to need to plug something into IQ Out. Let me show you what I use for IQ Out. When dealing with IQ Out, I use a 3.5 millimeter jack, and it's a TRS jack. I got this one from Amazon, and I put a couple of little ferrite chokes on it as well, just to prevent noise from coming on the inside. This brand is called Ugreen, and I haven't had any problems with it, so if you're interested in this cable, I'll provide a link below. This is just a standard TRS cable, so go ahead and plug in the first portion of the TRS cable into the IQ Out. After you have that plugged into the IQ Out, go ahead and plug the second portion of the cable into your computer's line in. If for some reason you don't have a line in, you can plug it into your computer's microphone in port. And I'll explain to you later why you might plug it into your microphone in anyway. So now that you have those things plugged in, your USB, your IQ Out, and an antenna, we're going to turn on the radio, and I've already turned mine on, but we need to change just one simple thing here on the radio. If you click on Radio Setting 2, now you can click on the General tab here and then go to Radio Setting 2, there's something here that says IQ Out Enabled is what the EN stands for, I presume. It was set to off here by default, so all you have to do is you have to scroll over to it. And once you're scrolled over to it and it's selected, just hit the up arrow until it says on. Once it says on, go ahead and you could hit this back button. And now we're ready to go work on the computer. So leave the radio just as it is right now. On the computer, there will be a few things that we need to do. And first of all, there's a couple of pieces of software you're going to need to download and install. The first one is going to be called OmniRig, and the second one is HDSDR. Again, I'll provide links below so it's easy for you to download. While that software is downloading, let's go ahead and check that the USB drivers for the X6100 are not only installed correctly, but configured correctly. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the lower left-hand side where it says type here to search, and we're going to type in devices. When we type in devices, we see something here that says Device Manager, and we're going to go ahead and open it up. Now, in Device Manager, we should be able to scroll down and see something here that says Ports. And with your radio on and the USB plugged in, you should see on this drop down right here, two ports. One that says serial A and one that says serial B. CH342 is the driver. So if everything was done correctly, you should see those, and they should install automatically from Windows. Mine are listed as COM 6 and 7. However, yours might be a little different. Yours might be something like COM 3 and 4, or even COM 9 and 10, depending on how many things you have plugged into your computer. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and double click on the lower number first, COM 6 in this case. And when we double click on it, we get some properties. What we want to do is click on port settings, and we want to make sure of a couple things. First of all, I need you to make sure that bits per second is set to 19200. There's a drop down here. There's a lot of options, but we're concerned with 19200. Make sure that data bits is set to 8. Parity is set to none. Stop bits is set to 1. And flow control is set to none, just as you see it here. Now, we don't have to worry about anything in advance here, so go ahead and you could just ignore that for now and click OK. We're going to do the same thing with COM 7. So again, double click it, port settings, and you're going to make sure that those settings are all the same as COM 6. Go ahead and click OK, and then click the exit button to get out of Device Manager. Okay, just trust me on this next part here. And OmniRig, we're going to go ahead and open it up and configure it as you see my settings here. So yes, I am aware that the IC718 is not a Xiegu or a Xiegu, it's a ICOM, but we're going to use these settings. Rig type IC718, COM port, we're going to select it to the lower of those two numbers we saw in Device Manager. As you recall, my lower number was 6. And then we're going to set the baud rate to 19200, just as we had it within the Device Manager. Data bits 8, parity none, stop bits 1. RTS and DTR, we're going to set those to high. And then you could leave the poll int in milliseconds and the timeout in milliseconds as they are, and click OK. Easy enough. Let's go ahead and open up HDSDR now, and we're going to get that all configured. With HDSDR open, we need to do a couple of things to the configuration settings. As you can see right now when I talk, the meter on the left-hand side moves. That's because I don't have the sound card configured correctly. Go ahead and click on sound card. And what we're going to do is our RX input from the radio needs to be changed. Now, do you remember earlier when I said that we're going to plug it into the line in? You should see an option for line in here. Now, the reason you might not use line in and you might use a microphone is sometimes a microphone is more sensitive. And in a little bit here, if we're not getting a good enough signal in via line in, you might switch to your microphone. But go ahead and select line in and then RX output to speakers. If you want to be able to hear your radio on your computer speakers or your headset, go ahead and find your headset and click that now. So for example, my headset that I'm using is Pro FX12 and click OK. Now you can see as I talk, that bar on the left-hand side doesn't actually move anymore, and that's because I have this almost configured correctly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to click on bandwidth, and we're going to make sure that we select 192,000 and 192,000. Everything else should be fine as it is and how it looks right here. And while we're talking about sampling rates, I think it's very wise that we talk about changing a couple of things on our line-in settings for Windows. So what we want to do is we want to go over to the little icon that looks like a speaker in the bottom right-hand side of your screen here. Right-click on it and go to Open Sound Settings. What's going to happen is we're going to get some sound settings to the display, as you can see here. And we're going to go down to Input, and we're going to find where it says Line In. So for example, mine was set to line 3. I'm going to drop down, and I'm going to go to Line In. And what we're going to do now is we're going to click on Device Properties. You could see that my volume is set to 100, and I might change that later, depending if I'm over-modulating or if my signal might sound distorted coming into the computer. But that's not what we're worried about right now. We're going to click right now on Additional Device Properties. And what we want to do here is we want to click on Advanced. When we click on Advanced, we want to make sure that we're set to 2-channel 24-bit 192,000 hertz studio quality. And now there is another option here for Enable Audio Enhancements, and you could play around with that later to see if your signal sounds better coming in with Enable Audio Enhancements or if it sounds worse. But for now, I'm going to leave it unchecked. But the key here is to make sure that you're selected with 192,000 hertz. Click OK. Now what we're going to do on Device Properties is we're going to click the back button, and we're going to change your input back to whatever the default was. So mine was, again, line 3. And we're going to exit out of here. Great. Now that you have the sampling rate set in this program as well as into Windows, you can click the X button there. And next we're going to click on Options. Now there's a few things we're going to need to change under Options, and we're going to start with going to Cat to Radio OmniRig, and we're going to select Sync Rig 1 IC718 online. And so with all that enabled, in theory, we should be able to see signals across a very wide spectrum on HDSDR on the waterfall display, but I'm just not, right? Well, let me show you why. Two things happen. As you can see on my radio here, if I go back to IQ out enabled, it went back to off. See, the 6100 has a very good tendency of when you reset the radio, it sometimes resets things to defaults. So I'm going to go in and enable this, and I'm going to click OK. And now I'm starting to see signals on that spectrum display, that very wide display, but I still don't hear anything. And the answer to that is to unmute down here. And once you do, you should be able to hear things. And now you could actually, after you unmute, go to some of those signals and try to see what sounds best. You might play with the noise reduction, the automatic gain control, and a whole slew of settings, really. You might even actually go back into your Windows sound properties or the sound settings, and you might go back to that line in and enable your audio enhancements here just to see what happens. I don't know if it's going to work great for you or not. However, This was just a guide in getting you set up so you could start to see and control your radio with HDSDR. Another thing you might look at too after you're finding those signals is you might make sure that you're in the right mode, lower sideband. But I will tell you, you could actually also control the radio and it will control HDSDR as well. So this is actually a really cool solution for the 6100. I hope this helps you out, and if it did, let me know it. But if you should have any questions, please let me know as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. Until next time, I'm Ham Radio Dude. Take care, 73.
We're in yesterday stayed in the 40s all day long. Man, might have got up to low 50s. Yeah, hey, I meant to tell you Friday when you talked about the ladder there, the boys wouldn't let you. We took the ladder away from it. Well, when you make them bring it back, make sure the boy comes with it.